little true archaeology involves the adventure and raw excitement of an Indiana Jones adventure. But among the items found by archaeologists in the year 1952 in a cave not far from Qumran was a most unusual scroll made not of parchment, but of copper. This scroll, broken in two pieces, was different from any of those encountered before in the Judean desert. It was rolled up like the others, but it consisted of sheets of copper which had been fastened together with rivets. This curious artifact should not have survived at all, but the cave entrance had collapsed long ago, sealing it from the outside air, as well as scavengers. Now that it had been discovered, the problem immediately arose of how to decipher it. What mysteries might this unusual artifact contain? The copper itself had long ago oxidized, so that any attempt to unroll it would result in the entire document crumbling into dust. A number of ideas were discussed, which included slipping photosensitive paper between the brittle leaves of metal. It was decided in the end, however, that the only effective way of reading the document was literally to cut it open. The cutting operation was accomplished with an extremely precise circular blade of the type used for the cutting of diamonds. In cut after excruciating cut, the metal of the scroll was sawed into a whole series of rectangular sheets, each one containing the same degree of arc as the original unrolled artifact. Unfortunately, this method cut directly through some of the writing, so as to make certain parts of the scroll illegible. Furthermore, the scroll's generally poor state of preservation greatly complicated the task of deciphering and translating the text. Nevertheless, what emerged was a complete document consisting of Hebrew letters pounded into the copper sheets and detailing the contents of a vast hoard of buried treasure. The text details the location and amounts of great quantities of gold, silver, and consecrated objects. Bear in mind that producing an accurate translation of the copper scroll remains a daunting and difficult task. But the following represents at least a good attempt, quoting selected passages. Item 1. בחרובה שבעמק אחור, תחת המעלות הביאה למזרח, אמות 40 שדת כסף וכליה ערבה. Item 2. בנפש בנדבך השלישי, אשתות זהב 100. Item 3. בבור הגדול שבחצר הפריסטילין, בור בקרקעו, סתום בחלי, נגד הפתח העליון, ככרין 900. Item 4. בתל של כוחלית, כלי דמה בלגין ואפודת. Item 5. הקול של הדמה והאוצר השביעי, מעשר שני מפוגל, פתחו בשולי האמה מן הצפון, אמות 6 עד נקרת הטבילה. Item 6. בשיא המעבה של מנוס, בירד אל שמאל, גבוה מן הקרקע, אמות 3, כסף 40 כיכר. Item 7. בבור המלח שתחת המעלות, ככרין 41. Item 8. במערת בית המדיח הישן, ברובד השלישי, אשתות זהב 65. Item 9. בצריח שבחצר מתיה, עצין וכתבן, בור בו כלין וכסף ככרין שבעין. Item 10. בבור שנגד השער המזרחי, רחוק אמות 19, בו כלין. The last entry is perhaps the most mysterious. בשיט שבצח צפון כוחלית, פתח אצפון וקברין על פיה. משנה הכתב הזה, ופירושיו, ומשחותיהם, ופרוט כל אחד ואחד. What could this incredible list of treasure represent? What could it mean? One clue might be in the way in which the scroll was composed, for the letters appear to have been hurriedly and crudely pounded into the copper, as if there were little time to do the job correctly. An intriguing possibility presents itself. It is well known that in the year 66 CE, a great Jewish revolt broke out against Roman rule in Judea, and that it was put down with great cruelty and ferocity. The Roman legions, passing by and overrunning the site of Qumran, headed to Jerusalem, where the temple was destroyed and the city burned to the ground. The last holdouts fled to Masada, where the Romans pursued them. Could it be that this was an inventory of the treasures of the temple itself, and that the copper scroll was produced in such a hurried fashion because the Roman legions were approaching, and there was no time to produce a more careful listing? Some scholars believe that the copper scroll, along with most of the other Dead Sea Scrolls, were originally produced in Jerusalem and hidden in the wilderness with the onslaught of Rome's legions. This assumes that the settlement at Qumran was not where the scrolls were written. The bulk of evidence, however, seems to show that the scrolls were in fact produced at Qumran. Another possibility is that this was not the treasure of the temple, since the sectarians rejected the temple worship, but was rather the accumulated wealth of the sect itself. Since the Romans destroyed Qumran as well as Jerusalem, the sectarians may have been in a hurry to hide their own treasure before the legions arrived. Recently, a new theory about the copper scroll relates it to the fact that after Herod's great temple was destroyed in the year 70 CE, money and other valuables were still collected for the performance of the sacrifices, as if the temple still stood. But between the years 70 and 90 CE, the Jewish faithful carefully hid them for fear that the Romans would confiscate them. The idea is that the copper scroll records the places where these temple tax collections were stashed away, but only until the Roman Emperor Nerva discovered and seized them. If this is actually what happened, then a warning must be issued to all prospective copper scroll treasure hunters. This theory may be hazardous to your hopes. But whatever the scenario that produced the copper scroll, the possibility that buried treasure might still be hidden in the sands of Judea was too much for at least some of the more adventuresome scholars. In a rush of excitement, a determined team of explorers took their metal detectors on an expedition across Judea in an attempt to locate the very sites which the scroll seems to describe. They found, after a great deal of sweat and travail, that most of the clues in the scroll were far too vague to be of any use. What exactly is the mound of Kochlit? And where is the cave of the old washer's chamber? One rather substantial mound was discovered, which might have been the sepulchre described in the scroll's inventory. Incredibly, The metal detectors registered a certain magnetism within, but it was impossible to distinguish between the natural magnetism of the hillside and that of possible buried metals. The only way to find out would be to destroy the entire ancient mound, which the explorers were neither prepared nor authorized to do. In the end, the copper scroll remains a mystery. No trace of this vast treasure has ever been uncovered. Perhaps it was robbed and plundered long ago. Another possibility is that the duplicate scroll, mentioned as the final entry, actually contained the real locations of the treasure, and that this was a clever ruse to throw off plunderers. Or perhaps the whole document is just an amusing invention to serve some unknown purpose. Why then inscribe it on a costly metal like copper? The fact is, we may never know. But the desert of Judea still bakes under the midday sun, awaiting any foolhardy soul with a metal detector and a lot of chutzpah. Such a fantasy is hardly more fantastic than the actual story of discovery of the first Dead Sea Scrolls, which were roused from their long slumber with a pebble thrown by a Bedouin shepherd boy.